It was supposed to be the quietest moment of the night. One last breath after 12 hours of alarms, blood, and borrowed strength. Emily Carter wrapped up her shift thinking the worst thing that could happen had already happened. She'd been fired for saving a life. If you've ever walked out of a job with your stomach in knots, wondering how you'll pay rent, how you'll face your family, how you'll keep going when the system says you're disposable, then this story is for you. Because at 3:12 a.m., with rain battering the hospital glass, 3 black SUVs slid into the ambulance bay and 6 Navy SEALs stepped into the lobby. They didn't call her nurse. They called her ma'am. Stay to the end, and you'll see how one choice can rewrite an entire life. Drop a like and tell me what city you're watching from. The word ma'am still vibrated in the air like a struck bell rung for a hospital lobby, wrong for a woman with wet scrubs and a cardboard taste of fear in her mouth. Emily Carter did not move. She could not. Her body had already spent every spare ounce of motion, keeping strangers alive, and now it was refusing to understand why armed men stood at attention for her. Her mind, desperate for something solid, slid backward to the hours that led her here back into the bright, relentless machinery of Harborview Regional, where compassion was measured in minutes and everything else was measured in dollars. The night had started the way most nights started for her, with fluorescent light washing color out of the world, and the smell of antiseptic clinging to her skin before she even touched a patient. The clock above the charge desk read 6:58 p.m. when she signed in. The marker board already looked like a storm map. Names, room numbers, red circles, black arrows. Trauma coming in from the interstate. A stroke on the 4th floor. A psych hold that security refused to approach alone. Emily pinned her hair tight and clipped her badge to her pocket, the plastic already scratched from years of being bumped by bed rails. Her hands were steady. They always were at the start of a shift before fatigue crept into her joints and turned each movement into a decision. Renee Morales, the charge nurse, caught her at the supply cabinet. "You are on triage and trauma overflow tonight," Renee said. "Same as last Tuesday. We are short again." Emily gave a small nod. Her face did not complain. Complaining did not refill staffing schedules. Complaining did not restart a heart. Renee watched her for a beat and lowered her voice. "Administration is walking the floor tonight. Bradley Kent is in the building." Emily felt the name like a cold fingertip on the back of her neck. She did not show it. "He is always in the building," Emily said. Renee's mouth tightened. "Not like this. He has some audit panic. He wants everything clean. No exceptions, no favors, no gray areas." Emily slid a pack of sterile gloves into her pocket and closed the cabinet with her hip. Gray areas were where the real work lived. A hospital ran on gray areas the same way a body ran on blood. If you cut them off, everything looked tidy for a moment right before it died. She walked toward the triage desk and the night swallowed her in layers. The whine of a ventilator, a toddler crying in a waiting room chair, a man coughing into his sleeve with the sound of something loose in his chest, the electric ding of elevators that never seemed to arrive fast enough. At 7:22 p.m., a woman in her 30s came in with chest pain and a face that tried to be brave. Emily asked her questions, listened to the story she told with her eyes more than her mouth, and watched the monitor paint the truth in jagged lines. The EKG was not dramatic, just dangerous enough. Emily moved her to a room without making it sound like an emergency because panic made oxygen demand climb, and she had learned long ago that words could harm as quickly as hands. At 8:10 p.m., a teenager staggered in with a deep cut across his forearm, his friends hovering like guilty ghosts. He smelled of cheap beer and adrenaline. He kept saying it was an accident. Emily did not argue. She irrigated the wound, asked about numbness, checked tendon movement stitched with a calm that made the boy blink in surprise. When he tried to apologize, she told him to keep his arms still. At 9:03 p.m., a paramedic rolled in a man who looked like he had been run over by the day itself. Sweat soaked his shirt. His lips were pale. His eyes kept sliding away from faces as if faces cost too much to look at. "No ID," the paramedic said. Found him under the overpass. He was confused, feverish hypotensive. We tried to get a name. He just said, Henderson maybe. Could be fake. Blood sugar was normal. Emily stepped to the gurney, her fingers already finding a pulse. It was fast and thready, like a bird trapped in a fist. The man's skin was hot, his breath shallow. "Sir, can you hear me?" Emily said close to his ear. "Can you tell me your first name?" The man's eyelids fluttered. His gaze tried to focus on her badge and failed. "Henderson," he rasped, then coughed hard enough to bend his ribs inward. Something wet rattled in his lungs. He gripped her wrist with surprising strength. For a second, his eyes cleared and locked on hers with a sharpness that did not match the rest of him. "Don't let them," he whispered. Then the clarity vanished, and the grip loosened. Emily's stomach tightened. She had heard delirium say stranger things than that. She had heard dying people reach for fear the way drowning people reached for air. Still, something about the man's eyes stayed with her. "Get him into Bay 4, she told the paramedic. "Full set of vitals, blood cultures, lactate, CBCCMPUA, chest, X-ray. 2 large bore IVs. Start a liter wide open." The paramedic nodded, and the team moved. As they rolled him down the hall, a resident physician in clean scrubs and a look of nervous confidence fell in beside them. Dr. Park, first year, still wearing his stethoscope like a seatbelt. "What do we have?" Dr. Park asked. "Sepsis until proven otherwise," Emily said. "Fever, hypotension, altered mental status. Likely pneumonia. Could be urinary. Could be something worse." Dr. Park glanced at the man's cracked hands, his filthy shoes, the layers of street life clinging to him. "Does he have insurance?" Dr. Park asked, like the question had slipped out before he could stop it. Emily kept her eyes on the patient. "Does it matter?" she said. Dr. Park flushed. "No, ma'am, sorry." Emily heard it the word ma'am said casually, said without weight. She did not correct him. She never corrected anyone for being polite. The word had not meant anything then. It was only a habit, a small courtesy in a building that rarely offered courtesy to people lying on gurneys. Bay 4 smelled like bleach and old fear. The monitor beeped out an urgent rhythm. The man's blood pressure dropped again, a slow slide that made the numbers look like they were melting. "Oxygen," 86 respiratory therapist called out as she placed the mask. "He is working hard." Emily leaned over him. "Sir, I need you to take deep breaths for me." The man's eyes rolled. His lips moved. Emily bent closer. "Veteran," he whispered, barely sound. "Not homeless? Not." He coughed, and a froth of pink-tinged sputum stained the oxygen mask. Emily's hand paused on the bed rail. She looked at his face. It was lined, weathered, the kind of face that had been alive long enough to earn its scars. Veteran could mean anything. It could mean truth. It could mean a plea designed to unlock sympathy. Still, the word sat in her chest and would not leave. Dr. Park ordered fluids, broad-spectrum antibiotics, vasopressors if needed. Emily drew blood cultures with quick precision. She taped lines, hung fluids, checked for infiltration, adjusted the oxygen. She moved around the bed like she had practiced this in a fire. At 9:27 p.m., the lab called lactate critical. At 9:31 p.m., the chest X-ray came back with a fog of infection in the right lung. At 9:34 p.m., the man's pressure dipped again, and Emily saw the slight blue creep into his fingertips. "He needs antibiotics now," she told Dr. Park. "Not after we argue about it." Dr. Park nodded. "I will order vancomycin and ceftriaxone." Emily felt a shift. That was standard. That was safe. That was sometimes not enough. "He is crashing," Emily said. "We should consider the restricted carbapenem, the one in the locked drawer." Dr. Park's eyes flicked toward the Pyxis machine near the wall. The restricted drawer. The one that required an authorization code and a second sign-off. "That is for critical insured cases," Dr. Park said carefully. "Or active duty." Emily watched the man's chest rise and fall like he was climbing a hill in the dark. She heard the wetness in his breath. She saw the way his skin glistened with fever. "He is critical," she said. Dr. Park hesitated. "I do not have authority for that without pharmacy approval." Emily's jaw tightened. Pharmacy was 2 floors away and 15 minutes behind reality on most nights. 15 minutes could be the length of a life. "I will call Dr. Park," said. Emily nodded, but her eyes did not leave the monitor. She had learned a long time ago that the difference between a hero and a liability was often a signature on a screen. She had also learned that when a body started to fail, paperwork did not stop it. While Dr. Park called, Emily leaned toward the patient. "Sir, I am Emily. I am a nurse. I need you to stay with me." The man's eyelids fluttered. For a heartbeat, his gaze sharpened again. He looked at her as if he was memorizing her face. "You are," he whispered, and the word dissolved into another cough. Emily felt something cold in her belly, a sensation she did not have time to name. She pushed it aside and moved faster. At 9:41 p.m., the phone call ended. Dr. Park looked at her with defeat. "Pharmacy." "Says no," he said. "They say use standard protocol. They say the restricted supply is tracked, and we will trigger an audit." Emily stared at him, then at the patient, then at the IV bag dripping steadily as if it believed that alone would be enough. Her mind did not shout. It clicked. She stepped to the Pyxis. She logged in. The machine chirped and displayed drawers like a locked vault. The restricted drawer required an override. The screen asked for authorization. Emily's fingers hovered. Renee Morales appeared in the doorway, drawn by the tension. "Emily," Renee said softly, "do not." Emily did not look at her. "He is going septic," she said. Renee's eyes flicked to the monitor. The numbers were ugly. She swallowed. "Bradley is here," Renee whispered. "He is hunting for reasons." Emily's breath came out shallow. "I am not doing this for him." She hit override. The machine warned her. She confirmed. The drawer clicked open with a small polite sound like it was apologizing for existing. Emily pulled the vial cold in her palm and set it on the counter. She moved with the same steadiness she used to start IVs on squirming children. She drew up the medication and walked it back to the bedside. Dr. Park's face went pale. "Emily," he said, "you cannot." "Watch me," she said without looking at him. Then she hung the antibiotic and flushed the line. The man's eyes were half open. He stared at the ceiling, breath dragging. Emily squeezed his hand. "You are going to feel cold for a second," she said. "Stay with me." His fingers tightened around hers. His lips moved. "Thank you," he breathed. Emily did not answer. She did not need thanks. She needed time, and she needed his body to accept the fight she was giving it. For a few minutes, the pressure held steady. Oxygen crept upward. The frantic edge of the monitor softened by a single degree. Emily exhaled through her nose. Renee remained in the doorway, watching her like she was watching a car drift toward a cliff. At 10:12 p.m., the first wave of trauma came in from the interstate. A chain reaction crash, 3 vehicles, 1 rollover. Blood and broken glass arrived on gurneys and on boots. Emily switched gears without thinking. She triaged with a fast, ruthless kindness. Airway, breathing, circulation. The body was either alive or bargaining with death. Her hands worked. Her mind stayed clear. A teenager with a shattered femur screaming for his mother. A middle-aged man with a punctured lung and a face gray with shock. A woman with a scalp laceration bleeding like a faucet and apologizing between sobs. Emily moved between them with quiet speed, stitching, suctioning, hanging blood, holding pressure, speaking in low tones that steadied panicked eyes. She did not feel like a hero. She felt like a tool, a necessary one. Somewhere in the chaos, she glimpsed Bradley Kent for the first time that night. He stood just outside the trauma bay doors in a suit too clean for the air, holding a tablet, watching the movement like it was an expense report unfolding in real time. His hair was neat, his posture sharp, his expression carved from distance. When a nurse rushed past and brushed his sleeve with a bloody glove, he recoiled as if the blood might stain his entire life. Emily filed the image away. She did not have time for him. At 12:47 a.m., the trauma wave eased. The halls did not quiet. They never truly quieted. They only changed their noise. Emily returned to Bay 4. The man who called himself Henderson looked marginally better. His breathing still rattled, but his eyes had more awareness. His blood pressure had climbed from the basement to the first floor. Dr. Park stood at the foot of the bed reading the chart with careful relief. "He is responding," Dr. Park said. The antibiotic helped. Emily nodded once. She did not say, "I told you so." Her satisfaction was private, and it was not clean. It was mixed with the knowledge that she had broken a rule to do it. Henderson's gaze found her. "Nurse," he said. Emily stepped closer. "Yes." He swallowed. His throat worked like each motion cost him. He reached a hand toward her, slow, deliberate. Emily took it, expecting the grip of fear or pain. His fingers closed around hers, firm, not pleading, grounded. "You are still here," he whispered. Emily frowned. Of course. His eyes held hers. For a moment he looked less like a sick man and more like someone who had been trained to hold himself together under pressure. "They will come," he murmured. "They always do." Emily's skin prickled. "Sir, she said you are safe here." His mouth twitched, not quite a smile, not quite disbelief. "Safe," he repeated, and then his eyes slid shut as if he had said too much. Dr. Park cleared his throat. "He is delirious," he said quickly, like he needed to put a label on the words to make them harmless. Emily did not argue. She patted the patient's hand once and stepped back. At 1:33 a.m., Renee pulled Emily into the supply hallway. "Bradley wants to see you," Renee said, "in the break room, now." Emily's fatigue arrived in a sudden wave. Her calves ached. Her shoulders felt like they were carrying wet sand. She had not eaten since before her shift. She had not sat down longer than 30 seconds. Still, something in Renee's eyes told her this was not optional. Emily walked toward the break room with the steady dread of someone going to court. Inside, the break room smelled of burnt coffee and microwaved noodles. The overhead light buzzed louder than it had any right to buzz. Bradley Kent stood with his tablet in hand, blocking the door as if he was afraid she might escape. He looked her up and down, taking inventory of her stained scrubs, her tired face, the lines around her mouth that had deepened over the years. "Mrs. Carter," he said, and the way he said it made her feel like a file. "Mr. Kent," Emily replied. He tapped his screen. "At 9:41 p.m., you accessed restricted medication from our controlled inventory. You did so without proper authorization. That is a violation of policy." Emily kept her voice even. The patient in Bay 4 was septic. He was hypotensive. He was crashing. Bradley's expression did not shift. "The patient in Bay 4 is unidentified, no insurance information, no confirmed status. Your action flagged the system." Emily stared at him. "The system," she repeated. He lifted one shoulder. "We operate under compliance requirements, under fiscal responsibility. This is a hospital, not a charity." Emily felt heat flare behind her eyes. She had learned to keep emotions in a box during codes and deaths. But this was different. This was someone choosing not to see. "He was going to die," Emily said. "Not later. Not eventually. Right then." Bradley's lips tightened into a patient smile. "And because you decided you were above protocol, you exposed this hospital to an audit. Do you have any idea what a medication like that costs per dose? Do you have any idea what penalties look like when regulators find unauthorized access?" Emily's hands trembled. She curled them into fists so he would not see. "Do you know what it costs to let someone die because they cannot pay?" she asked. Bradley blinked, surprised by the question, then recovered. "We do not let people die," he said as if it were a slogan. "We treat, we stabilize, we follow procedure." Emily leaned forward slightly, her voice lowering. "He said he served. He said he was a veteran." Bradley's eyes narrowed. "Everybody says that when they want sympathy." Emily felt something snap, not loudly, but cleanly. Her voice sharpened. "I am not moved by sympathy," she said. "I am moved by blood pressure and oxygen saturation. I am moved by sepsis and dying organs. I am moved by the fact that he is alive right now because I acted." Bradley's fingers tightened around the tablet. "This is not the first time you have acted outside the chain," he said. "You bypassed an authorization 3 months ago for imaging. You delayed a transfer last year because you believed the patient was not stable." "Because they were not stable," Emily said. Bradley's gaze hardened. "You prioritize emotion over protocol. You prioritize your own judgment over institutional policy. Harborview is a business. We cannot sustain bleeding hearts." The phrase landed like a slap. Emily stared at him, then looked past him at the door behind his shoulder. She imagined walking out, leaving the building, letting it deal with its own cold logic. But she saw the faces of the people in the waiting room. She heard the sound of a child crying. She smelled the iron tang of blood from Trauma Bay. A business did not do that. People did. Bradley stepped closer. "Effective immediately, you are suspended pending a formal review board." He raised the tablet and flicked his finger. "Your access is revoked." Emily's throat tightened. "Suspended," she said. Bradley's smile sharpened. "Between us, you should start looking for a job somewhere with fewer rules. A long-term care facility, a clinic, somewhere your heart will not be a liability." Emily's eyes burned. She refused to let the tears fall. She had seen too much to cry in front of a man like this. She nodded once because she did not trust her voice. "Turn in your badge at security," Bradley said. Emily stood. Her knees protested. Her body wanted sleep and warmth in a chair that did not feel like punishment. Instead, she moved around him and opened the door. Bradley's voice followed her into the hallway. "Also, we will be reviewing the controlled inventory discrepancy. You should be prepared to answer for the missing medication." Emily stopped for half a second, her hand on the doorframe. Missing medication. He made it sound like she had stolen jewelry. She did not turn around. She walked back into the bright, merciless hall. The hospital had a way of spreading news faster than any infection. By the time Emily reached the locker room, the air around her had changed. Conversations thinned when she approached. Eyes slid away. People became very interested in their phones, their charts, the floor. A young nurse named Kelsey, fresh out of school and still soft around the edges, stood near the med cart with a tight face. Emily had taught her how to start an IV on the first try, how to speak to doctors without apologizing for doing her job, how to breathe when a patient coded. Kelsey opened her mouth as Emily passed, then closed it again. Fear made people silent. Emily did not blame her. Hospitals ate the weak first. She reached her locker and spun the dial with fingers that felt numb. Inside, her life fit into a small metal box. A stethoscope given to her by her father before he died. A folded photo of her daughter on a campus lawn, smiling, hair blown by wind. A set of keys. A cheap tote bag with a broken zipper. She pulled the stethoscope out and held it for a second, its weight familiar, its rubber cool against her palm. It had been in her hands through births and deaths, through nights when she had driven home in silence and sat in her car because she could not yet walk into an empty house. 3 years earlier, her husband had died after a long fight with cancer. The bills had arrived like waves. Their savings had disappeared one treatment at a time. Emily had kept working because work was the only thing that still made sense, and because her daughter had been accepted to college, and Emily refused to let grief and debt steal that future too. Now her job was being taken from her with a flick of a finger on a tablet. She packed slowly, not because she wanted to savor the moment, but because she needed her hands to keep moving so her mind would not fall apart. In the corner of the locker, her badge lay face up. Emily Carter, RN, Trauma and Triage, Harborview Regional. She peeled the badge off her scrubs. The sound of the adhesive ripping felt intimate, like tearing skin. When she closed the locker, the click echoed in her chest. She walked down the main corridor toward the front lobby. The hospital looked cleaner at night, like the darkness outside had polished it. White walls, bright floors, glass that reflected tired faces. Somewhere, a janitor pushed a mop bucket, the wheels squeaking. Emily passed the family waiting room. A man slept sitting upright, his forehead against the wall, hands folded like a child. A woman stared at a vending machine as if it might answer her questions. Emily felt the urge to stop to ask if they needed water, if they understood what was happening. She kept walking. She did not trust herself to speak without breaking. At the end of the corridor, the lobby opened up wide and glossy and cold. The automatic doors waited like a mouth. Mr. Dorsey sat behind the security desk, a cup of coffee near his hand. His shoulders sagged with the long hours. When he saw Emily, he stood, and his face softened. "Emily," he said, "you heading out?" She nodded, keeping her gaze on the floor for a second. The rain outside drummed against the glass, steady and heavy. "Rough night," Mr. Dorsey said. Emily let out a breath that tasted like metal. "You could say that." He hesitated. "They should not do you like that," he said quietly. Emily looked up. His eyes were kind, and that kindness almost undid her. She swallowed hard. "Take care of yourself," Mr. Dorsey said. Emily tightened her grip on her tote bag. "You too." She took one step toward the doors, and the cold light from outside seeped through the glass. The parking lot beyond was a blur of rain and reflections. For a moment, she could almost imagine getting into her car, driving home, taking off her shoes, sitting at her kitchen table with a cup of tea she would not taste. Then Mr. Dorsey's gaze shifted past her shoulder. His expression changed fast. Confusion, then alarm. Emily turned her head, and through the rain-streaked glass, she saw light not from an ambulance, not from a police cruiser. White beams cut across the storm like searchlights, sweeping the entrance as three dark shapes moved into the ambulance bay with a precision that did not belong to any civilian night. The three dark shapes slid to a stop so sharply the rain seemed to recoil. Unmarked SUVs, tall and angular, their engines idling with a low, controlled growl. Headlights washed the ambulance bay in hard white light, turning the wet concrete into a mirror of glare and shadow. Mr. Dorsey leaned forward at the security desk, his coffee forgotten. His lips parted. Emily's mouth went dry. The vehicles were too clean, too deliberate. The way they aligned was not careless parking, it was a formation. The SUV doors opened at the same moment. 6 men stepped out into the downpour, and the rain did not soften them. It ran off their tactical vests and helmets, and sheets pooled on their shoulders dripped from their gloves like water from stone. They did not hurry. They did not look around with uncertainty. They moved with the quiet confidence of people who had already decided what would happen next. Emily felt something old tighten in her chest, a reflex that did not belong to her life as a nurse in Norfolk. It was the kind of tension that came before a door got kicked in, before a room turned violent. The automatic doors hissed open. Cold wind surged into the lobby, carrying the smell of wet asphalt and diesel. The 6 men entered, and the hospital air seemed to change around them, the same way a room changed when a storm rolled in. Water dripped from their gear onto the polished floor, making dark spots that spread. Their boots left faint muddy prints on the clean tile. The waiting room fell silent. A man holding a plastic cup of water froze with it halfway to his mouth. A young nurse at the triage desk stopped speaking into the phone, her eyes locked on the rifles and the hard lines of the men's posture. Even the beeping of the front desk monitor felt quieter, as if the building itself was trying not to draw attention. Mr. Dorsey stood up behind his desk, instinctive caution tightening his shoulders. He raised a hand not in a stop gesture, but in the only polite question he could manage. "Can I help you, sir?" he started. The lead man did not answer. He was massive, built broad and high like a door frame. A thick beard clung to his jaw. A pale scar cut through one eyebrow, giving his gaze a permanent angle of severity. He scanned the lobby, once his eyes moving with the precision of someone measuring distance and threat in the same glance. Emily's heart hammered. She tried to tell herself these men were here for someone else, A VIP, a politician, a witness, anyone but the woman with a tote bag and a termination notice still burning in her pocket. Then the lead man's eyes found her. It was not a casual glance. It locked, held, as if he had been given a photograph and told to match it to flesh. Emily's breath caught. From the administrative hallway, a sharp click of dress shoes on tile cut through the silence. Bradley Kent came fast, suit jacket, buttoned tablet in his hand like a badge. His face was tight with anger and something else, something close to panic. He looked at the wet floor first, then at the weapons, then at the men, his eyes narrowing as his authority reached for a handle. "Excuse me," Bradley said loudly. "Excuse me. You cannot bring firearms into this facility. This is a hospital. It is a sterile environment." The lead man walked straight past him. Bradley stepped in front again, raising his voice as if volume could turn him into a barrier. "I am the operations chief," Bradley said. "You are trespassing. I demand to know who is in charge here." The lead man did not stop. He did not look at Bradley. He moved like Bradley was a chair that had been pushed into the wrong place, something in the way, but not worth attention. Two of the other men split outward without a word, positioning themselves near the elevators and the side corridor. Another drifted toward the entrance doors, his body angling to block sight lines from outside. Their movement was not frantic. It was practiced. It made the lobby feel smaller. Bradley's cheeks flushed. He reached out and grabbed the lead man's arm. "I am talking to you," he snapped. "You do not ignore me in my own hospital." Mr. Dorsey stiffened. The triage nurse made a small sound in her throat and stepped back. The lead man stopped. Slowly, he turned his head just enough for Bradley to see his eyes behind the ballistic glasses. "Sir," he said, voice calm, low, absolute. "Step aside." Bradley lifted his chin. Or what? The lead man did not raise his voice. He did not threaten with posture. He simply let the weight of his certainty settle into the air. "Or you will be removed," he said. Bradley released his arm as if burned. He stumbled one step back, catching himself, his expression shifting from anger to a sudden awareness that the rules he relied on did not apply in this moment. The lead man turned fully toward Emily and began walking. The sound of his boots struck the tile in slow, even beats. Each step closed distance. Emily's body went rigid. She pressed her back against the wall beside the exit doors, fingers squeezing the straps of her tote bag until her knuckles whitened. She tried to speak. No sound came. Mr. Dorsey's hand hovered near his radio. His eyes darted between Emily and the men, uncertain whether to intervene or whether intervention would get people killed. The lead man stopped 3 feet in front of Emily. Up close, he seemed even larger. Rainwater traced lines down his beard. The faint smell of gun oil clung to him, sharp and metallic like the inside of a weapon locker. His gloves were black, thick, worn. Emily looked up at him and felt very small. "I do not," she began, then stopped. Her tongue felt too big for her mouth. The lead man lifted one gloved hand to his face. For a second, the entire lobby held its breath. He removed his ballistic glasses. His eyes were a pale, piercing blue. They were the kind of eyes that had seen terrible things and learned to keep looking anyway. But as he focused on Emily, the hardness in them shifted. Something softened, as if a steel door had opened just enough to let light through. "Ma'am," he said. His voice filled the lobby without shouting, deep and rough like gravel under water. Emily blinked, confused. Ma'am was not what you called a fired nurse. Not in a hospital. Not in front of witnesses and administrators and strangers. The lead man snapped his heels together and saluted. The motion was crisp, sharp, practiced to perfection. It cut through the air like a blade. Behind him, the other 5 men snapped to attention and saluted in unison, their bodies aligned, their faces controlled. The synchronized movement made the moment feel ceremonial, almost unreal. Bradley stood frozen, mouth open. The triage nurse leaned forward as if she needed to confirm what she was seeing. A patient in the waiting room whispered something Emily could not hear. Emily's tote bag slipped from her fingers and hit the floor with a soft thump. She stared at the salute, at the word ma'am, at the way these men who looked like they could break concrete with their hands were treating her like she outranked the building. "You have the wrong person," Emily whispered. The lead man held the salute for one more beat, then lowered his hand. "No, ma'am," he said, "we do not." Emily's throat tightened. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She searched his face for recognition for an anchor. The scar through the eyebrow. The eyes. The way he held his jaw like he was containing something. A memory scratched at the back of her mind, distant and hot and full of dust. She pushed it down. Norfolk was not a desert. Harborview was not a war zone. Bradley found his voice again sharp and offended. "This is ridiculous," he said. "Whoever you are interfering with hospital operations. This woman has been terminated for misconduct. She stole controlled medication. She is under review and she is leaving." The lead man turned his head toward Bradley, not fully just enough. "Terminated," he repeated. The word sounded wrong, coming out of him like a bad taste. "Yes," Bradley said quickly, leaning into the only power he had left. "Fired. She is a liability, and I do not care who you are." For the first time, the lead man smiled. It was not friendly. It was brief and cold, as if amusement had brushed him and moved on. He looked at his team. "Did you hear that?" he said. "The suit says she is a liability." One of the men behind him made a short sound that might have been a laugh if it had not carried a hint of warning. Bradley straightened his tie. He took a step forward, trying to recover ground. "You are not authorized to be here," Bradley insisted. "I will have security escort you out. I will call federal authorities." Mr. Dorsey did not move. His face had gone pale, his eyes wide. He looked like a man who understood that security did not exist for this kind of situation. The lead man reached into a pouch on his vest and pulled out a thick roll of cash, the bills bound tight. Bradley blinked. "What is that?" The lead man tossed it lightly. The roll hit Bradley in the chest and bounced. Bills scattered across the floor, fluttering like damp leaves. There was more money than Emily had seen in a single place in years. Bradley stared down, stunned. "How much did you claim she stole?" the lead man asked. Bradley swallowed. 2,000, he said, voice thinner, maybe, with fines. The lead man's eyes did not leave Bradley's face. "Keep the change," he said. "Buy yourself a conscience." Bradley's jaw tightened. He dropped to one knee, automatically scrambling for the bills as if money could restore his control. The image of him on the floor suit trousers, creasing hands grabbing at scattered cash, did something to the air in the room. The power dynamic shifted completely. Everyone could feel it. The lead man turned back to Emily. Up close, his gaze looked less like a weapon and more like a question that had been carried for years. Emily swallowed. She felt tears sting behind her eyes, not from fear now, but from the sudden weight of being seen this way by men who did not salute anyone without reason. She forced her voice to work. "Who are you?" she asked. The lead man's lips parted. His voice softened just slightly. "Cal Reynolds," he said. The name hit her like a flash of heat. Her mind snapped backward, not gently, but violently. Sand in her teeth. Smoke in her lungs. The scream of rotors overhead. A young face on a stretcher, blood bubbling at his lips. A pair of blue eyes wide with terror. Emily's knees went weak. Her hand lifted as if on its own, hovering in the air between them. "No," she whispered. "That is not possible." Cal's expression shifted, something like relief crossing his features. "You remember," he said. Emily shook her head once, small, helpless. Her eyes filled. "You were dead," she said. "You flatlined. I saw it." Cal's mouth twitched the edge of a tired smile. "Hard to kill, ma'am," he said. "Ma'am again." In the same voice he had used when he first walked in, steady and respectful, as if it were the only correct way to address her. Emily's breath trembled. The lobby felt far away. Norfolk felt far away. The hospital lights blurred. Cal gestured subtly toward the men behind him. "Team is present," he said, then paused, his eyes on her. Present and accounted for. His team did not speak. Their silence felt like discipline, like a promise. Emily's lips parted. Cal, she whispered, voice breaking. I was just a nurse. Cal's gaze held hers. No, he said quietly. You were the reason I got to become anything at all. The words landed in her chest and settled there heavy and warm and painful. Bradley, still on the floor, looked up, his face twisted with confusion and rage. This is insane, he said. I am calling the police. Cal did not look at him. He did not need to. One of the operators stepped closer to Bradley, not aggressive, simply present. A shadow in tactical gear. Bradley flinched and looked away. Cal's attention remained on Emily. We are leaving, he said. Emily blinked. Leaving where? Cal reached down and picked up her tote bag from the floor. He held it out to her with the careful respect of someone returning something sacred. Take this, he said. Emily took it automatically. Her fingers shook. I cannot, she started. I have to. Her voice faltered. She did not even know what she meant. She had no job, no authority here, no badge. Still, the hospital had been her world for decades. Leaving it even in disgrace felt like stepping off a cliff. Cal spoke softly, as if he could hear the chaos in her head. You are not staying here tonight, he said. Emily looked past him toward the corridors, toward Bay 4, toward the man who had whispered strange warnings. My patient, she said, the man in Bay 4. Cal's eyes narrowed for the first time. He did not ask questions. He did not need to in front of witnesses. He gave a small nod. Handled, he said. Emily did not understand, but the calm certainty in his voice steadied something in her. Mr. Dorsey cleared his throat voice hoarse. Sir, he said to Cal, what is going on here? Cal turned toward him. The shift in Cal's expression was subtle, but real. He looked at Mr. Dorsey like he was seeing a person, not an obstacle. You are security, Cal said. Mr. Dorsey nodded, shoulders tight. Yes, sir. Cal studied him for a beat. You were the only one who looked at her like she mattered. When we came through that door, Cal said. Mr. Dorsey's eyes flicked to Emily, then back. His face tightened, embarrassed, then firm. She is a good nurse, he said simply. Best in the building. Cal reached into his pocket and pulled out a heavy coin. It was dark metal with a trident stamped into one side edges worn smooth from being handled. It looked ordinary until it caught the light and you could see the careful detail, the weight of something that meant more than decoration. Cal pressed it into Mr. Dorsey's palm. If you ever need anything, Cal said. Anything at all, call the number on the back. Mr. Dorsey stared at the coin as if it had turned into a live animal. He looked up, confused. I do not, he began. Cal's hand closed briefly around Mr. Dorsey's fingers, firm and respectful. Call, he repeated. Then Cal released him and turned back to Emily. Form up, Cal said. His team moved instantly. They surrounded Emily without touching her, creating space and shelter at the same time. The formation made her the center of a quiet storm. Emily's body reacted before her mind caught up. Her shoulders lowered slightly. Her breath slowed. Some part of her recognized what it meant to be protected by men like this, to be moved through danger in a bubble of discipline. Bradley pushed himself to his feet, clutching a fistful of bills. His face was red with humiliation. You cannot take her, he said. She works for this hospital. She is under investigation. Cal finally looked at him full and direct. No, Cal said, she does not. Bradley opened his mouth to argue. One of the operators stepped closer, and the argument died in Bradley's throat. Bradley's eyes flicked to the weapons, to the calm faces, to the hard certainty. He swallowed. Emily watched him. She felt a flash of anger, sharp and clean, followed by something quieter. Exhaustion. Relief. A strange grief. 20 years of service reduced to a man in a suit telling her she was a liability. Cal's team guided her toward the doors. As they moved, Emily caught glimpses of faces. The triage nurse, eyes wide. A respiratory therapist with her mouth covered by her hand. A patient whispering to another patient, trying to make the moment make sense. Emily kept her gaze forward. If she looked too long, she might start to cry. If she cried, she might not be able to stop. The automatic doors opened again. Rain hit her face, cold and immediate. The sound of it was louder outside a constant roar against asphalt and metal. The team escorted her through the ambulance bay, their bodies forming a moving wall. The SUV's weighted engines idling, doors open. Emily's shoes splashed through shallow puddles. Water soaked the hem of her scrub pants. She felt the chill climb her legs. Cal opened the rear door of the nearest SUV and gestured for her to enter. Emily hesitated at the threshold. Her eyes swept the hospital behind her. The glass doors. The bright lobby. Mr. Dorsey standing at his desk with the coin clutched in his fist. Bradley, visible through the glass, still holding cash, his face twisted. Emily looked back to Cal. Why, she asked, voice raw. Why now? Cal's expression softened again. Because you were in trouble, he said. Emily's breath shook. That did not answer the real question. Not the one burning beneath her ribs. Not the one that had followed her for decades. Cal leaned slightly closer, lowering his voice so it did not carry. And because we owe you, he said. Emily climbed into the SUV. The interior smelled of leather and damp gear. The seat was firm, supportive. The door closed with a heavy sealed sound that cut the rain down to a muffled roar. Cal slid in beside her. Across from them sat one of the other operators, a giant of a man with broad shoulders and eyes that seemed too thoughtful for his size. He watched Emily with careful attention, as if she were fragile in a way bullets did not understand. The SUV began to move. Emily pressed her palms against her thighs, trying to steady the tremor in her hands. Her mind spun. Fired, saluted, taken. 20 years collapsing into a single night. Cal watched her face without staring. Emily, he said quietly. She looked at him. He spoke her name like it mattered. You did not deserve what happened in there, he said. Emily swallowed. Her eyes burned. I broke policy, she whispered. Cal's gaze did not waver. You saved a life, he said. Emily's throat tightened. She did not know what to do with the simple truth of that sentence. In the hospital, truth was often buried under procedure and blame. Here, it sounded clean. The SUV hit a pothole and jolted. For a heartbeat, the smell of rain and wet asphalt shifted into something else in Emily's memory. Burning diesel. Hot dust. The distant scream of rotors. The SUV jolted, and for a heartbeat the smell of rain and wet asphalt slid into something hotter, harsher, like metal, left too long in the sun. Emily's fingers tightened on the tote straps. Her eyes fixed on the dark window, but she was no longer seeing Norfolk. She was seeing dust. She was hearing rotor blades clawing at the air. Cal sat beside her, silent, letting her drift where her mind wanted to go. Across from them, the giant operator watched without staring, as if he understood the shape of a memory that hurt. Emily swallowed. Her throat felt scraped raw. I checked the obituaries, she said quietly. For months. I thought you died. Cal's face turned toward her. Even in the low light, she could see the tension in his jaw. I was in a coma for 6 weeks, he said. When I woke up, you were gone. Emily let out a breath that shook. I was told to leave. They said I had 2 options. Disappear or lose everything. Cal's gaze dropped to his hands for a moment. Hands scarred in places that did not come from hospital work. They scrubbed your name from the report, he said. Not because they did not value you. Because they were afraid of what would happen to you if anyone put it on paper. Emily stared at him. The words did not land gently. They landed like weight, afraid of what she asked. Cal's voice stayed low. The surgery. The box you broke. The way you took over when people with rank froze. They would have called it a crime. They would have made you a headline to protect themselves. Instead, they buried you. Emily's mouth went dry again. She looked down at her hands. Those hands had placed IV lines in dim hallways and cleaned blood from floors and held strangers while they died alone. Those hands had also done things she never spoke about, things she forced into a locked room in her mind, because if she opened the door, she might never close it again. She pressed her fingertips against her palm as if she could prove she was still here. Bear shifted slightly, the leather seat creaking. His voice came out gentle, surprisingly calm for someone built like a wall. Ma'am, he said you do not have to talk about it if you do not want. Emily flinched at the word. It landed differently in the SUV than it had in the lobby. In the lobby, it was a shock. Here, it sounded like a promise. She took a slow breath. I do not even know why I am going with you, she said. I do not know what you think I can do. Cal's eyes held hers. You already did it, he said. You did it when you had no reason to. That is why we are here. The rain tapped the roof above them. The city lights slid past in smeared reflections. Emily tried to anchor herself in the present, but her mind kept drifting back to the moment her life split into two. The smell came first, burning diesel and sweat, the sour bite of fear. Then, sound. A crack that punched the air, the low roar that followed. Emily's eyelids lowered. When she opened them again, the SUV was gone. So was Norfolk. The world was sand and heat and canvas. Helmand Province, 2006. The clinic was a cluster of tents stitched together by necessity and hope. It sat on the edge of a village that had learned to rebuild itself every few months. The air always carried dust, even when the wind stopped. Even when it was quiet, the quiet felt temporary, like a held breath. Emily was 32 then. She wore her hair the same way she wore it now, tight and practical, because loose hair in a medical tent became a hazard fast. Her hands were steadier, then her back less stiff, but her eyes were already tired. The day had started with children. A girl with a burn on her forearm from a cooking fire. A boy with a fever that would not break. An old man with a cough that sounded like gravel. Emily moved through it all with a calm focus, taking vitals, cleaning wounds, soothing panic with her voice. She was not a surgeon. She was not supposed to be the one to do anything dramatic. Her job was to support, assist, keep the line from snapping when the pressure hit. The pressure always hit. She was in the sterilization tent when the first blast came. The ground jumped. Metal trays clattered. A jar of gauze toppled and rolled. For a half-second, her brain tried to label it. Mortar, rocket, something. Then a second blast answered closer, and the canvas walls shivered like skin. A siren screamed to life. Mass casualty, a voice shouted over a loudspeaker. Mass casualty inbound. All medical personnel to triage. This is not a drill. Emily ran. She did not grab a helmet. She did not grab a vest. She grabbed nothing but herself, and whatever stubborn part of her refused to freeze. Outside, smoke climbed into the bright sky. Men sprinted toward the gate. A pickup truck skidded sideways, tires throwing dust. A soldier stumbled past with blood on his sleeve, his eyes wide and unfocused. As Emily reached the triage bay, the first vehicle arrived. A Humvee with its side torn open like a can. The smell hit her hard, copper and fuel, and something deeper, the smell that told her the body had been opened. They began dragging men out. Some were silent. Some screamed. Some stared upward, as if the sky could explain what was happening. A medic shouted, "We need a surgeon, now." Emily looked to the operating tent. The doctor assigned to the clinic, Dr. Mercer, stood inside the doorway, staring at a severed boot on the ground, as if his mind had left his body. Dr. Emily snapped, gripping his shoulders. "We need to operate. We need you." Dr. Mercer's eyes flicked to her and away. "Too many," he whispered. "Too much damage. We cannot save them." Emily's pulse jumped. She wanted to slap him. She wanted to drag him by the collar. Instead, she looked past him at the next stretcher coming in. A young man, barely older than a teenager, lay on it with his chest slick with blood. His throat was torn. Shrapnel glittered in the raw skin along his collarbone. His leg bent, wrong bone threatening the surface. His eyes were open, bright with terror. Blue eyes. He tried to speak. Only bubbles of blood came out. Emily stepped closer before she realized she had moved. Her hand found his wrist. The pulse was there, fast and fading. The soldier's gaze met hers. He held it like he was drowning, and her eyes were the last thing above water. Emily felt something flip inside her. Fear did not vanish, but it took a step back. In its place came a cold clarity. She turned to the nearest orderly, a skinny young man named Lucas, who looked like he might faint. "Prep the operating tent," Emily said. "I am scrubbing in." Lucas stared. "Ma'am, you are a nurse." Emily leaned in close enough that he could smell the antiseptic on her gloves. "Then move like one," she said. "Open the kit, lay out instruments, start suction, get lights on." Lucas swallowed hard and ran. Behind her, Dr. Mercer made a small sound of protest. Emily did not look back. She pushed him aside with her shoulder and stepped into the operating tent. Inside, the air was hotter. The small cooling unit wheezed like a dying animal. Flies had found the edges of the tent and circled the light. Someone had thrown a surgical drape over the table, but the corners were already dusted with sand. The young soldier was rolled in. His breathing was wet and shallow. His chest rose unevenly. The monitor clipped to his finger beeped fast, then faster. Emily stood over him, taking him in the way she took in a crashing patient in an ER. Airway, breathing, circulation. Airway, compromised, blood, gurgling. Breathing, failing. Right side barely moving. Circulation unstable. Pulse fading. Lucas hovered near the oxygen tanks, hands shaking. "You cannot do this," he whispered. "You will be court-martialed." Emily did not answer. She leaned over the soldier's face and spoke into his ear. "Hey," she said, "hear me. I am Emily." His eyes flickered. "You stay with me," she said. "You do not leave." He tried to nod. Blood spilled from the corner of his mouth. Lucas thrust a suction line toward her. His hands trembled so badly the tip bounced. "Hold it steady," Emily said. "I am trying." Lucas rasped. Emily's voice sharpened. "If you drop that line again, I will personally make sure you spend the rest of your deployment cleaning latrines." Lucas froze, then gripped it like his life depended on it. Emily pulled on gloves, though she already had gloves. She tightened them anyway, like ritual could turn chaos into control. She looked at the instrument tray. Scalpels, clamps, gauze, not enough of anything. She checked the soldier's neck. The jugular was nicked, bleeding in small spurts with every heartbeat. She could clamp it, she could slow it, but the bigger problem was inside his chest. She listened with a stethoscope that did not belong in war. Right side was nearly silent. "Collapsed lung," she whispered. The soldier's eyes fluttered. His lips moved. No sound. Emily picked up the scalpel. Lucas made a choked sound. "Emily, please." Emily's gaze cut to him. "Lucas, listen. You want permission. You want someone to tell you it is allowed. Nobody is coming." She turned back to the table. She made the first incision at the neck, precise, controlled opening, just enough to see what she needed. Blood surged warm and fast, splattering her goggles. Emily did not flinch. "Clamp," she said. Lucas hesitated. "Which one?" Emily reached into the tray, grabbed a hemostat, snapped it onto the bleeding vessel herself. Bleeding slowed. The monitor screamed. The line went flat. Lucas's face crumpled. "He is gone." "Call it. Call time." Emily dropped the clamp and placed both hands on the soldier's sternum. "No," she hissed. She began compressions hard and fast. The soldier's chest gave under her palms. She felt a rib crack. She kept going. "Come on," she muttered, breath tight. "Come back." Lucas fumbled at the crash cart. "We are out of epinephrine," he cried. "The supply convoy was hit last week." Emily's eyes flicked to the wall. There was a metal box bolted near the pole that held IV fluids. It was locked, marked restricted, meant for the chief medical officer only. Inside were the vials they saved for the worst day. This was the worst day. Emily grabbed a heavy wrench from the counter and smashed the lock. The glass shattered. Dust puffed into the air. Lucas stared in horror. "That is a federal offense." Emily's voice did not change. "Then put it in my file." She ripped a vial free, drew it up with shaking hands that steadied as soon as the needle pierced the rubber, and slammed it into the IV port. "Live," she said, staring into the soldier's open eyes. "Live." 30 seconds passed in a tunnel of sound. Her compressions. The distant rattle of gunfire. The wheeze of the cooling unit. Then a beep. Then another. A rhythm crawled back onto the monitor, weak but real. Emily's shoulders sagged for one heartbeat. Then the tent rocked. A blast landed close enough to lift the canvas walls. The lights flickered and died. Darkness swallowed the room. Lucas screamed. Incoming, someone shouted outside. North gate breach. They are inside the wire. Gunfire snapped. Rounds tore through canvas above their heads with a sound like ripping cloth. Dust and bits of fabric rained down. Emily froze for the first time, not from fear of death, but from the sick realization that the rules of medicine were about to change. Protocol in an overrun scenario was simple. Evacuate to the bunker. Leave anyone who could not walk. Emily stood in the dark chest, heaving hands slick with blood. The soldier lay on the table alive again, only because she had stolen him from death, and now he was going to be left behind for someone else to finish. She clicked a flashlight on and clenched it between her teeth. The beam cut through dust and smoke. The soldier's eyes were closed. His chest rose shallowly. His skin had gone pale. He was helpless. Emily's gaze shifted to the tent flap. Shadows moved outside. A flashlight beam swept past the opening. Her body moved before her brain debated. She grabbed a Kevlar vest that someone had left on a chair. It was heavy, stiff, with dust smelling of sweat and old smoke. She draped it over the soldier's torso like a shield. Lucas stared at her. "What are you doing?" Emily swallowed the flashlight beam and spoke around it, voice muffled. "Staying." Lucas's eyes widened. "You cannot." Emily climbed onto the gurney and curled over the soldier, her body covering his chest and throat, her arms shielding his head. Her heart slammed in her ribs. She could feel the soldier's heartbeat faint against her own. She shut her eyes. "Please," she whispered, voice shaking. Not him. Footsteps approached the tent. A shape paused at the flap. The fabric shifted as someone pushed into it. Emily held her breath. A man stepped into the opening with a rifle. His silhouette filled the doorway. He shouted in a language Emily did not understand. The barrel lifted. Emily felt the moment stretch thin. 2 muffled shots sounded outside, suppressed clean. The silhouette jerked and fell backward out of view. American voices snapped through the darkness. Clear left, clear right. 3 figures burst into the tent wearing goggles that glowed green. They moved like ghosts, fast and precise. "Identify the lead one," barked Laser Dot, flickering across the tent. Emily did not move from the soldier. She raised her hands slightly, palms out. "Nurse," she shouted. "I am a nurse. He is critical. Do not shoot." The lead operator lowered his weapon and yanked his goggles off. His face was smeared with grime. His eyes were bloodshot from hours of strain. He looked at Emily, then at the soldier under her. His expression shifted. "Ma'am," he said, voice thick, "it is over. You can let go." Emily could not. Her muscles shook. Her body had become a shield, and shields did not move. "Is he breathing?" she demanded, her voice cracking. The operator checked the monitor, then looked back at her, disbelief and respect mixing in his gaze. "You brought him back," he said. "You brought him back, and then you covered him like you were his armor." Emily swallowed hard. "Who is he?" The operator's jaw flexed. "Cal Reynolds," he said. "New guy, stubborn, does not know when to quit." Emily's eyes squeezed shut. She felt her own breath stutter. She did not know Cal. Not really. Not yet. He was a face on a stretcher, a pulse under her fingers, a life she refused to let go. The operator keyed a radio clipped to his vest. "Bravo 1 to command," he said. "Package secured. Civilian secured." He looked at Emily again, as if he could not believe she was real. "The White Witch is secure," he added. Emily blinked confused, even through shock. "The what?" The operator's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "That is you, ma'am," he said. "Only magic makes sense of what you just did." They evacuated the tent fast. The air outside was chaos. Smoke and shouting. Men firing into shadows. The bunker entrance crowded with bodies. Emily stayed close to the gurney, hands on the rails as they ran. She refused to let go until Cal was loaded onto a helicopter. The rotor wash whipped dust into her eyes. She blinked through tears she did not remember forming. On the helicopter ramp, the operator who called himself Bravo 1 stepped close and spoke into her ear over the roar. "You are going to get dragged for this," he said. "They are going to threaten you. They are going to try to make you the problem." Emily stared at the helicopter interior, at Cal's pale face, strapped down at the medic squeezing a bag to keep him breathing. "He is alive," she shouted back. "Bravo." One nodded. "I know. That is why you did it. That is why you will not regret it even when they try to break you for it." The helicopter lifted. The wind shoved Emily back. She stood in the dust and watched it climb into the sky until it became a dark speck against a bright, uncaring sun. 2 days later, they put her on a transport and sent her home. No ceremony, no thanks, a reprimand, a stack of papers, a warning delivered with a careful voice. "You will not speak about what happened," a man in uniform told her. "Not to anyone. Not to media. Not to licensing boards. You will not use names. You will not discuss location." Emily stared at him. "Why?" "Because if this becomes public," he said, "you will become a scapegoat, and people who should be punished will not be. Disappear quietly. Let this vanish." Emily did not argue. She did not have the strength. She went back to Virginia, back to hospital halls, back to fluorescent lights, and she locked the memory in a box so tight she almost forgot it was there. She kept nursing. She kept surviving. She kept putting other people back together while something inside her stayed stitched in the desert. Now in the back seat of an SUV, that box had cracked open. Emily blinked hard and found herself staring at the rain-slick window again. Norfolk lights slid by, the leather seat pressed against her back. Her tote bag sat on her lap like a lifeline. Cal's voice reached her gently. "Emily," he said, "look at me." She turned her head. His eyes were the same as they had been, only older, now steadier. The fear in them had been replaced by something sharpened by years. "You remember all of it," he said. Emily nodded once. Her throat worked. "I remember the sound of your chest cracking under my hands," she whispered. "I remember thinking, if I stop you, disappear." Cal's gaze held hers. "I heard you," he said. "Not then, later, in pieces. They told me you ordered me to live, that you refused to quit." Emily let out a short breath, almost a laugh that died before it formed. "I was angry," she said, "at the world, at the fact that you were a kid." Cal's mouth tightened. "I was terrified," he admitted. "I was not brave, I just did not have a choice." Emily looked down at her hands again. The tremor had eased, replaced by a deep ache. "I did not do it because you were special," she said. "I did it because you were there." Cal leaned back slightly, the SUV's dim interior cutting shadows across his face. "That is what made it special," he said quietly. The giant operator across from them shifted, his massive hands resting on his knees. His voice came out soft. "Ma'am," he said, "a lot of us made it home because of people like you. But we only met one who crawled onto a table and took fire for a stranger." Emily's eyes stung again. She turned her face slightly toward the window so no one would see too much. Outside, the city thinned. Streetlights grew farther apart. The road widened, darker, emptier. The rain kept falling steady as a metronome. Cal glanced forward, then back at her. "You are safe in here," he said. Emily swallowed. Safe was a word that did not belong to her tonight, but the way he said it made her body unclench by a small degree. She watched the world slide by until a chain-link fence appeared ahead, tall and wet, topped with coils of wire that glistened under floodlights. Beyond it rose a gatehouse and a stretch of pavement that looked too clean, too controlled, too separate from civilian life. The SUV slowed. Tires hissed on wet asphalt. Emily's fingers tightened around her tote bag again, not from panic this time, but from the instinct to hold on to something familiar as the vehicle rolled toward the gate. The SUV rolled up to the gate, and the world narrowed to floodlights and wet steel. Coils of wire glistened overhead. A sign bolted to the fence read, "Restricted Area U.S. Government Property. No trespassing." Rain streamed down the letters in thin black rivers. 2 armed guards stepped out of the booth, rifles held low but ready. Their faces were hard until they saw who was behind the wheel. One of them leaned toward the window, a flashlight sweeping the interior. His beam landed on Cal and stopped. The guard straightened at once. His hand rose in a quick, tight salute. "Evening, sir," he said. The gate began to open without another question. Emily's breath caught. She had spent 20 years watching security guards demand her badge and scold her for stepping through the wrong door. Here, a gate that looked like it belonged to a prison swung wide because Cal sat in the back seat and nodded once. The SUV passed through. Inside the perimeter, the air smelled different. Less city, more fuel, more metal. The pavement was too clean, the markings too precise. Highlights turned the rain into white lines, slashing through the darkness. They drove past a row of low buildings with no windows, and a few hangars that looked asleep. The radio in the front crackled once with a clipped voice, then went quiet again. Emily tried to speak and found her tongue stuck to the roof of her mouth. "Where are we?" she asked finally. Cal's eyes stayed forward, watching the path ahead, as if he could see past the rain. "A private annex," he said. "Not public. Not on maps anyone cares about." Emily's fingers tightened around her tote straps. She looked at Bear across from her. He sat still, broad shoulders taking up too much space, hands resting in his lap like he was waiting for a signal. His calm was not casual. It was controlled. The SUV slowed and turned. A hangar came into view, its doors half open. Bright white light spilled out in a rectangle reflecting on wet concrete. The sound hit next low and constant. Engines spooling. A matte, black jet sat on the apron nose pointed toward the runway. No markings. No tail number visible from this angle. The aircraft looked like it had been carved from shadow and polished. Emily stared at it. A jet like that did not wait for hospital nurses. The SUV rolled to a stop beside the stairs. The driver killed the engine. For a second, the silence inside the cabin was louder than any noise. Cal turned toward Emily. His face had changed. The softness from the lobby was gone. What remained was focus sharpened and heavy. "Emily," he said, "listen to me." She nodded, though her body still felt like it belonged to someone else. "We have a casualty," Cal said. "He needs surgery tonight." Emily blinked. Surgery. The word sparked a cold flare in her chest. "Cal, I am a nurse," she said. "Not a surgeon, not a flight doctor, not." Cal did not interrupt. He let her words run out and die on their own. "We do not need perfect," he said. "We need you." Emily's throat tightened. Her mind tried to find an exit, some logical path back to a normal life. Her apartment, a shower, a job search, anything that did not involve a black jet and armed men in the rain. "I just lost my job," she said. "I have bills. I have a daughter. I cannot disappear." Cal's gaze held hers. "We are not asking you to disappear," he said. "We are asking you to save someone who cannot go to a hospital." Emily's eyes flicked to the jet. The engines continued their low, hungry roar. "Who is it?" she asked. Cal's jaw flexed. "General Holt Maddox," he said. The name landed like a weight. Emily's mind flashed to the operator in night vision who had called her ma'am in the tent. The man who had looked at her like she was something both impossible and necessary. "He is a general now," Cal continued. He took 2 rounds to the chest. Emily felt the cold spread through her arms. How, she asked. Cal did not answer the question. He did not have to. Not yet. His focus stayed on the part that mattered. "He is on that plane," Cal said. "We have a full medical bay. We have equipment. We have blood. But our medic is gone. The doctors on call want to stabilize and transfer." Maddox refused. "He asked for you." Emily stared. The rain seemed to thicken. The floodlights blurred. "He asked for me," she whispered. Cal nodded once. "He has a lot of pull, Emily, and he owes you his life. He does not forget that." Emily's pulse hammered. A part of her wanted to laugh at the absurdity. Another part wanted to run. "I am 52, she said. My hands shake after a 12-hour shift. I cannot do this on a plane. Cal's expression did not soften. It stayed steady. Your hands shook in that tent too, he said. You still did it. Emily swallowed hard. She could feel the old box in her mind, the one she had kept sealed, pressing outward again. The memory of blood on goggles, the sound of a rib cracking, the feel of a body under her as bullets tore canvas overhead. Cal opened his door. Wind and rain rushed in. Bear moved, first stepping out and scanning the apron. Another operator exited and took a position near the stairs, eyes sweeping the darkness beyond the hangar lights. Cal stepped out and looked back at Emily. "Come on," he said. Emily stared at her tote bag, at the photo of her daughter inside, at the stethoscope she had packed without thinking. Her father's gift worn smooth by years. She pulled it out and held it in her hands. The rubber felt familiar. The metal caught the floodlight and flashed. Emily stepped out into the rain. Cold hit her face. Wind tugged at the tight knot of her hair and loosened a strand that stuck to her cheek. She followed Cal toward the stairs. The jet engines roared louder as they approached, vibrating in her ribs. The stairs were slick with rain. A crew member in dark clothing waited near the top face, hidden by a headset and the angle of the light. Cal reached the base of the stairs and turned to her. "Once you go up," he said quietly, "you stay close, you listen. You do what you do best. Do not waste time thinking about what you are not." Emily looked at him. For a second, she saw the young face on the stretcher again, blue eyes wide with fear, and she saw the man in front of her, now older, scarred, steady. She drew a slow breath and let it out. "Okay," she said. Cal's mouth tightened into something like relief. "Good," he said. "Let us move." Emily put her foot on the first step. Tires shrieked across wet pavement. A black sedan burst into the light, sliding sideways as it braked hard near the hangar doors. Another vehicle followed behind it. Men in suits spilled out, weapons up, moving fast and messy compared to Cal's team. A voice cut through the engine roar. "Federal agents, stop right there." Emily froze, one hand gripping the rail. Cal spun his hand already on his pistol. Bear moved between Emily and the lights, his body blocking her view for a fraction of a second. "Get on the plane," Cal barked. Emily's heart slammed. She climbed. The first shots cracked. Bullets pinged off metal. Sparks snapped off the stair rail near her hand. The sound was sharp wrong in this place, too real. Her mouth tasted like copper. Cal fired back short, controlled bursts, forcing the men in suits to duck behind their sedan doors. Bear took a knee, his pistol steady, his breathing calm. Emily climbed faster, shoes slipping once on the wet step. She caught herself and kept going. The crew member grabbed her arm at the top and pulled her into the cabin. The interior was bright and narrow, the air warm and dry compared to the rain outside. It smelled of leather and jet fuel. Emily turned back. Through the open hatch, she saw Cal and Bear at the base of the stairs, weapons up, holding the line. The men in suits advanced in short bursts, firing with more aggression than skill, their muzzle flashes strobing against the rain. Bear fired 3 shots. One of the sedan windshields shattered. A man cursed and dropped behind the hood. Cal shouted something Emily could not hear over the engines and gunfire. His posture stayed low, precise, as if he had done this in worse places. Another burst of bullets chewed the asphalt beside him. Cal moved. He sprinted toward the stairs with speed that did not match his size. Hit the first step, took them 2 at a time. Bear backed up, covering him. Emily stumbled backward into the cabin, eyes locked on Cal. A hand yanked the hatch handle. The door began to swing shut. Cal dove inside as the last of the gunfire snapped behind him. The hatch sealed with a heavy thud. A wheel spun, locking it. The cabin pressurized and the outside noise dropped to a muted thrum, like the world had been pushed underwater. Emily stood frozen in the aisle, breathing hard, wet scrubs clinging to her skin. Cal snapped his head toward the cockpit and spoke into his comm. "Go, go, go," he ordered. The jet lurched. Emily grabbed the nearest seat back as the aircraft surged forward, acceleration throwing her weight backward. The aisle tilted under her feet. Somewhere behind the cockpit, a warning tone beeped, then cut off. The engines climbed from a roar to a scream. Emily's ears popped. Her stomach dropped. She felt the plane pivot slightly, and then the vibration changed as they hit the runway. They were moving fast, too fast for comfort. Emily's hands tightened on the seat. Her knuckles went white. Cal appeared beside her eyes, scanning her face. "You good?" he asked. Emily swallowed. The nurse part of her fought through the fear and latched on to the only useful question. "Where is Maddox?" she asked. Cal pointed toward the rear of the cabin. "Medical bay. Through that curtain." Emily forced her legs to move. The plane continued to accelerate. The floor trembled under her feet. She reached the curtain and pushed through. The back of the jet had been gutted and rebuilt into a flying trauma room. Monitors glowed. IV pumps blinked. A surgical table was bolted to the floor with metal brackets. Supplies were strapped down in neat rows, everything labeled, everything ready for chaos. On the table lay General Holt Maddox. He looked older than the man from her memory, hair silver now, face lined with the weight of years and decisions. But the eyes were the same, even half-lidded, sharp, aware in the way soldiers stayed aware even when broken. Right now, his skin had the waxy gray of shock. 2 chest seals were plastered on his right side, blood leaking from beneath them in slow, dark pulses. A young man in a headset pressed a towel to the wound with shaking hands. He looked up at Emily like she was not supposed to exist here. She stepped forward and the plane lifted off. The shift from ground to air hit her knees. The cabin angle changed. Gravity pulled her backward for a second, then eased, leaving a strange lightness in her limbs. Emily placed 2 fingers on Maddox's carotid. His pulse was fast weak. She glanced at the monitor. Oxygen saturation 82 and falling. Blood pressure 70/40. Heart rate climbing. "He is not waking up," the headset officer said, voice thin. Emily turned her head just enough to look at him. "Move," she said. The officer flinched, hands sliding away from the towel as if burned. Blood welled immediately. Emily took over, pressing firm pressure, then assessing with quick, practiced movements. Maddox's chest rose unevenly. The right side barely moved. Emily pressed her stethoscope to his chest. The metal felt cold against his skin. The left lung sounded wet but present. The right side was silence. Her mind clicked through the possibilities with ruthless speed. "Tension pneumothorax," she said. Cal pushed through the curtain behind her, already stripping off his wet tactical vest. "Tell me what you need," he said. Emily did not look back. "I need hands," she replied. "Scrub fast, cut his shirt completely off, get me a fresh line, fluids wide open." Cal moved without hesitation. He snapped gloves on with the ease of someone who had practiced in darkness. The giant bear stepped in behind him, silent eyes focused. Emily's gaze stayed on Maddox. "If we do not vent the pressure in 60 seconds, he arrests," she said. The headset officer stared. "Vent," he repeated. Emily reached for a heavy gauge needle from the supply rack. Her hands were steady now. Fear had nowhere to live when there was work. The plane shuddered. Turbulence dropped them hard enough that Emily's feet lifted off the floor for a fraction of a second. The needle wobbled in her grip. She slammed her heel down and anchored herself against the table, forearm braced, hand still. "Hold him," she snapped. Cal and Bear pinned Maddox's shoulders and hips firm but careful. Emily found the second intercostal space by feel ribs under her fingertips. She drove the needle in. A sharp hiss exploded out loud enough to hear over the engines. Air and a mist of blood sprayed. Maddox gasped a ragged, desperate inhale like he had been drowning. "Oxygen is rising," Cal said, eyes on the monitor. 85, 88. Emily did not relax. Not yet. "He is not out of the woods," she said. "Bullet likely nicked the subclavian. That is why he is bleeding through the seal. I have to go in." Cal's eyes flicked to her face. "Here," he said. "On the plane." Emily pulled on another pair of gloves, then reached for the scalpel. "Unless you want to turn around and go back," she said, "and let those men with badges finish the job." Cal's jaw tightened. He did not argue again. Bear stepped closer, looking uncertain for the first time. "I am not a doctor," he said. Emily handed him a retractor. "You are my hands," she replied. "Hold this. Do not move, even if the plane shakes like it is falling apart. If the heart rate drops below 50 or goes above 140, you tell me. If the pressure drops, you tell me. You watch what I cannot watch." Bear swallowed hard. "Yes, ma'am," he said, and the word came out higher than before. Emily positioned the surgical light, then leaned over Maddox. His eyes flickered open, unfocused. He saw her. Even half-conscious recognition sparked. "Emily," he rasped, "do not talk." "Emily," said voice softer now, "save your breath." Maddox's lips moved anyway. They found a shadow of a smile. "Still doing the impossible," he whispered. Emily set her jaw. She had no time for sentiment, only precision. She made the incision. Blood welled immediately, hot and dark. She suctioned, hands moving with practiced rhythm. The sterile field was as sterile as it could be in a flying metal tube. She worked anyway because infection did not wait for ideal conditions. The plane banked. The floor angled. Emily adjusted her stance without looking away, knees bent, body steady like a tripod. Cal fed instruments into her hand as if he had done this before, though she knew he had not. He watched her eyes, her fingers anticipating what she needed. Bear held the retractor with both hands, muscles trembling, face tight with concentration. Emily found the bleeding. "Subclavian artery," she said quietly, more to herself than anyone. "Nicked, not severed." A thin line of blood pulsed in time with Maddox's heart. She clamped above the tear. The bleeding slowed. She exhaled through her nose. Now the bullet. She probed with forceps, careful, methodical. Maddox's chest was a maze of tissue and danger. One wrong move and she could turn a survivable wound into a fatal one. The plane shuddered again. A sharp dip made the instruments tremble in her hands. Emily's voice cut through the room. "Hold steady," she ordered. Cal pressed his palm against the table frame, anchoring it. Bear's arms locked. Emily waited half a beat for the turbulence to pass, then continued. Her forceps touched something hard. She felt it before she saw it. The bullet was lodged near the upper lung, deformed by impact, resting too close to the heart to be forgiven. Emily's mouth went dry. She eased it free millimeter by millimeter. When it finally came loose, she lifted it into the light. A small piece of metal, ugly and ordinary, capable of rewriting lives. Cal stared at it, then at Maddox's pale face. "You got it," he whispered. Emily did not answer. She was already moving to repair. She sutured the vessel with small, tight stitches. She checked for additional bleeding. She inspected the lung, then placed a tube securing it with practiced knots. Her world narrowed to the field. 6 inches of light. The sound of the monitor, the steady hiss of oxygen, the thrum of the engines. Time blurred. When she finally said, closing, her voice sounded distant even to her. She tied the final knot and pressed gauze to the incision, then taped the dressing down with firm hands. She stepped back. The monitor numbers climbed. Blood pressure 110/70. Oxygen 98. Heart rate settling. Emily felt her knees go soft. The adrenaline that had carried her began to drain, leaving behind a tremor that started in her hands and spread up her arms. She sat hard on the nearest bench, breathing through her mouth. Cal handed her a bottle of water. His eyes were wide with something that looked like awe and fear mixed together. Emily took it and drank. The water was cold. It tasted like life. Bear exhaled for what felt like the first time in an hour. Sweat shone on his forehead despite the cool air. Maddox's eyes fluttered open again, clearer now. He turned his head slightly toward Emily. She was looking down at her hands, flexing her fingers as if she did not trust them. Maddox spoke, voice rasping. "White witch," he murmured. Emily's head snapped up. "Do not call me that," she said. Maddox's mouth twitched a weak smile. "I will call you whatever I want," he said, then winced as pain cut through him. Emily leaned in, checking his pupils, his pulse, the dressing. "You want to live," she said, then stopped talking. Maddox's eyes stayed on her. "You should not be here," he whispered. Emily felt a hard laugh press against her throat. She swallowed it. "Neither should you," she replied. Cal stepped closer, crouching beside Emily so his voice would not carry forward to the cockpit. Those men on the ground, he said they were not supposed to be there. Emily wiped a smear of blood from her wrist, careful not to smear it onto the monitor cables. They said federal agents, she murmured. Cal's jaw tightened. That is what they wanted you to believe. Emily looked at him, and the fear returned, smaller, now sharper. Who were they, Cal? Cal did not answer right away. He glanced at Maddox, then back at her. Maddox's eyes were open, listening. Cal spoke low. Contractors, he said. A private outfit with government access. The kind that can wear a suit and carry a rifle and still get waved through checkpoints. Emily's stomach turned. Why would contractors shoot at a general? Maddox's voice rasped from the table, answering before Cal could. Because the general was about to become a problem, he said. Emily turned to him. Her nurse instincts wanted to hush him again, but something in his gaze told her he would talk whether she liked it or not. Maddox swallowed pain, tightening his throat. Emily, he said, the man you treated tonight. The one in Bay 4. Emily's chest tightened. Henderson, she said. Maddox's eyes held hers. That name is a cover, he replied. Emily felt the room tilt, though the plane was flying steady now. He was not homeless, Maddox said. He was one of mine. Deep cover. He came to you because he could not go anywhere else. Emily's mind flashed back to the man's grip on her wrist. The way his eyes had sharpened for a moment. The words. Don't let them. Her mouth went dry. He was carrying evidence, Maddox continued. Proof that billions have been siphoned into private hands under the cover of defense budgets. He got poisoned for it. He knew he was dying. He needed the data to leave his body and stay alive somewhere else. Emily stared. The jet engines hummed. The monitors beeped softly. The sterile room on a plane felt suddenly too small for what she was hearing. Cal watched her face carefully. He gave it to you, Cal said. Emily's throat tightened. He squeezed my hand, she whispered. He said strange things. I thought it was delirium. Maddox's eyes narrowed slightly, like the general side of him had pushed through the pain. Not delirium, he said. He was doing what he was trained to do. He placed it where only you would find it. Emily blinked. Placed what? Maddox's gaze dropped to her scrubs. Check your pocket, he said. The inner pocket, the one you never use. Emily's hand moved slowly, almost unwilling. She slid her fingers into the small pocket sewn inside her scrub top, the one meant for a pager she had not carried in years. Her fingertips brushed something hard and cold. Emily's breath hitched. She pulled it out. A tiny micro SD card wrapped in a strip of gauze stained dark with old blood. For a moment, she could only stare at it. The object looked too small to cause this much violence. Cal's eyes fixed on it. His face went hard. They knew he came to the hospital, Cal said. They knew he met you. They did not know what he handed off or where it went. So they pushed a lever. Emily's gaze snapped to him. My firing, she said. Cal nodded once. Bradley Kent, he said. He did not wake up and decide to care about restricted antibiotics. He was paid to flag you, isolate you, make you walk into the rain alone with your life in a tote bag. Emily felt nausea rise. Her mind flashed to the break room. The tablet, the cold smile, the way Bradley had blocked the door. He set me up, she whispered. Maddox's voice came out rough. He was not the only one, he said. People like that do not move alone. Emily clenched the SD card in her fist until its edges bit her skin. So those men in suits, she said they were coming for me. Cal's gaze held hers. Yes, ma'am, he said. Emily flinched. The word ma'am felt heavier now, like an oath. Cal continued, voice tight. We intercepted chatter, he said. We heard a pickup plan. Interrogate you, find the drive, make you disappear. We moved faster. Emily stared at the SD card, then at Maddox on the table, then at Cal. Her life had been hospital corridors and budget cuts and late-night loneliness. It had been grief kept quiet so she could keep working. Now, a piece of plastic and metal was turning her into a target. Emily swallowed hard. What do I do? She asked. Cal's eyes did not waver. You stay close, he said. You keep that drive on you. You do not talk to anyone you do not trust. You do what you did tonight. Emily's voice shook. "I treated a patient," she said. "I used a medicine. That is all I did." Maddox's gaze hardened, pain sharpening it into something fierce. "That was enough," he said. "In a building full of people who follow rules, you were the one person who followed conscience." Emily felt anger flare. She did not want to be brave. She did not want to be special. She wanted to be a nurse who went home after a shift and slept. Instead, she was on a jet with the general cut open and stitched back together by her hands clutching a data chip. Emily looked at Cal. "Where are we going?" she asked. Cal's answer came simple and firm. "Somewhere they cannot reach first," he said. Emily drew a slow breath, then released it. Her hands still shook, but her mind had found its narrow path again. Work first, panic later. She stood and moved back to Maddox, checking the dressing, the tube placement, the monitor. She adjusted the IV flow with a practiced twist of her fingers. Maddox's eyes followed her. "Still sharp," he murmured. Emily did not look at him. "Still alive," she replied. Cal's mouth twitched a brief ghost of a smile that vanished as quickly as it came. The headset officer remained near the wall, pale, watching Emily like he had just witnessed a miracle he did not understand. His throat worked. "Ma'am," he said softly, "are we safe?" Emily glanced at him. She saw the fear there, the civilian fear of being caught in something bigger than you. She did not offer comfort she could not guarantee. She offered function. "Sit down," she said. "Breathe. Keep your hands off the equipment unless I tell you." The officer nodded quickly and sat. Emily returned to the bench, finally letting her shoulders drop. She opened her fist and looked at the SD card again. Its smallness felt insulting. She slid it into the deepest pocket of her tote bag under the photo of her daughter, then pulled the zipper closed until it caught on the broken track, and she had to force it. Cal watched her do it. "That bag needs replacing," he said. Emily's laugh came out thin. "It was all I had time to grab," she replied. Cal's gaze softened for a moment, then returned to focus. "You grabbed what mattered," he said. The jet continued forward through night and cloud engine's steady cabin lights bright. Emily sat with her hands clasped, listening to the monitor's beep, letting the sound anchor her to the only truth she trusted. A heart still beating. A patient still alive. Rain and gunfire and accusations and salutes felt unreal compared to that rhythm. Maddox's breathing steadied. His skin slowly shifted from gray toward something closer to human. The numbers held. Emily watched them, refusing to believe in luck, trusting only in vigilance. Cal leaned back against the cabinet, eyes on the curtain, as if he expected threats to appear inside the plane as easily as they had appeared on the ground. Bear stood near the doorway, arms crossed, body a quiet wall. Minutes passed, then more. Maddox's eyes opened again. He looked at Emily with a steadiness that ignored pain. "They will come again," he said. Emily did not answer with fear. She answered with the only thing she knew. "Then we keep moving," she said, and checked the monitor again. Cal watched her for a long beat, as if measuring the steadiness in her voice against the chaos that had dragged her here. He gave a small nod, not approval, not comfort, just acknowledgement. The kind you gave someone when you had nothing gentle left to offer, only respect. The jet cut through cloud and rain. The cabin lights hummed. The medical bay felt sealed off from the rest of the world like a bright room floating inside a storm. Maddox's eyelids fluttered. He was awake now in short bursts, pain pulling him under and then letting him rise again. Emily stayed close, checking the dressing, reading the numbers, listening to the chest tube's faint rhythm. Cal leaned against the cabinet near the curtain, eyes angled toward the aisle, posture loose but ready. Bear stood at the doorway like a locked door made of muscle arms crossed, gaze steady. Emily did not like the way all of them kept their bodies positioned. It told her more than words did. It told her danger was not behind them. It was with them. Maddox's eyes opened and held. He turned his head, slightly wincing, and fixed his gaze on Emily. "You have it," he rasped. Emily's fingers tightened around the tote on her lap. The SD card felt like it was burning through fabric. "Yes," she said. Maddox's jaw flexed. "Keep it close. Do not let anyone touch your bag. Emily leaned in, voice low. You said he was poisoned. Henderson. Maddox's eyes narrowed. He was already dying when he walked into your ER. He knew he would not make it out. The poison buys time. It keeps you mobile until it does not. Emily looked down, mind snapping back to Bay 4. The way Henderson's eyes had sharpened, the way his grip had been too deliberate to be random. She felt a cold wave pass through her. Did he live? She asked. Cal answered before Maddox could. He is alive, for now. Emily's breath came out, ragged relief and dread twisting together. How she whispered. Cal's gaze shifted to the curtain, then back. We moved him. Quiet. No paperwork, no stretcher parade through the lobby. He is in a safe bed with people who do not ask insurance questions. Emily stared at Cal. Her nurse instincts collided with everything else. You took him from my hospital, she said. Cal's voice stayed calm. Your hospital fired you for saving him. Your hospital would have handed him over for a signature. Emily opened her mouth, then shut it. She hated that he was right. She hated that she had known it in her bones long before tonight. Maddox swallowed, hard pain flashing across his face. Henderson was carrying proof. Accounts, transfers, names, not rumors, not theories, evidence. Emily's grip tightened on the tote. Names of who? Maddox's eyes held hers. People who hide behind contracts. People who wear clean suits and make wars into invoices. Cal's expression went hard. A firm called Aegis. Emily repeated it softly, tasting the word. Aegis. Maddox nodded. They call themselves a security consultancy. They sell bodies and silence. They sit close enough to government money to skim it without leaving fingerprints. Henderson found the pipeline. Emily's mind tried to fit the pieces together. A patient in her ER. A firing. Men in suits with rifles. A general bleeding on a plane. Bradley Kent, she said. He was involved. Cal's jaw tightened. He was paid to isolate you. He did not need to know everything. He only needed to do his part. Emily's anger flared sharp and pure. He looked at me like I was nothing. Maddox's voice rasped. That is how it works. You turn people into nothing, then nobody asks questions when they disappear. Emily felt nausea rise. She pressed her palm against her stomach and forced it down. My daughter, she said suddenly. Her voice cracked. If they were coming for me, what about her? The medical bay went still. Cal's posture shifted. Not panic, not surprise, just an immediate recalibration. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. What is her name? He asked. Emily stared. You already know my name. You already found me. You tell me you have been looking for 20 years, and you are asking about my daughter now. Cal did not flinch. I am asking because I need to make sure she is not exposed. Because you are not the only pressure point in your life. Emily swallowed hard. Lily. Lily Carter. She is at Old Dominion. Cal nodded once. Does she live on campus? Yes, Emily whispered. Dorm. She has roommates. She has. Her voice failed. Her hands trembled. Cal raised a hand, not touching her, just close enough to signal calm. We will not let them reach her, he said. But you cannot call her from your phone. Emily's head snapped up. I have to tell her I'm okay. Cal's eyes held hers. Not from that number. Not on civilian towers. Not while we do not know who has what access. Emily's breath shook with frustration. I am her mother. Maddox spoke, voice rough but firm. We can get a message to her. Controlled. Clean. No trace back to you. Emily stared at him. You can. Maddox's gaze did not waver. Yes. Emily's shoulders sagged. The relief that hit her felt almost painful, like a muscle unclenching after years of being held tight. Cal glanced toward the headset officer near the wall. Get me the secure line. The officer moved too fast, eager to obey. He opened a small cabinet and pulled out a compact handset corded old school. He handed it to Cal with both hands. Cal dialed a short sequence without looking. Emily watched his fingers. They were steady. Everything about him was steady. That steadiness made her feel for the first time since the lobby that she might not be drowning. The handset clicked. A voice answered on the second ring, clipped and calm. Cal spoke quietly. "I need a wellness check and a message delivered. Campus housing. Old Dominion. Lily Carter. Tell her her mother is safe. Tell her mother will call when she can. Do not mention location." He listened, then added, "Tell her not to answer unknown numbers. Tell her to stay with friends and keep her doors locked." Cal's gaze flicked to Emily as he spoke that last part, an apology in his eyes for the fear it would cause. Emily nodded once, throat tight. Cal ended the call and handed the handset back. "Done," he said. Emily exhaled slowly. It was not comfort, not really, but it was action. It was something that mattered. Maddox's eyes closed briefly. His breathing stayed steady. Emily leaned in again, checking his pupils, then the dressing. She moved like she belonged here because the body in front of her needed her to belong. Cal watched her hands. "You still have it," he said. Emily did not look up. "I never lost it." Cal's mouth twitched. Then he grew serious again. "We cannot land at a public field," he said. "We are going to a facility that does not ask questions." Emily nodded, too tired to argue, and too aware that her old life had already been cut loose. She glanced down at her scrubs, stained and wrinkled the fabric that had once been her uniform and now felt like evidence. "How long?" she asked. Cal looked toward the cockpit door. "Not long." The jet's vibration shifted. A subtle change in pitch, a subtle tilt. Emily felt pressure in her ears as they began to descend. She braced herself against the bench, one hand on the table near Maddox's shoulder. Her body moved with the plane now adjusting without thought. The cabin lights flickered once. The engines lowered into a controlled growl. Emily listened to Maddox's breathing. It stayed steady. The wheels hit the ground with a hard thump that rattled the cabinets. The jet rolled, slowing. The runway lights outside were sparse and dim, not the bright lanes of an airport, but the restrained glow of a place that did not want attention. The aircraft turned and rolled toward a hangar whose doors opened as they approached, revealing white light spilling onto wet pavement. When the jet stopped, the cabin went quiet except for the low hum of systems. Cal moved first. He pushed through the curtain and scanned the aisle, then nodded toward the hatch. Bear opened the door. Cold air rushed in. Emily felt the smell again. Fuel and salt and rain. She glanced out and saw dark water beyond the hangar, a strip of coastline under night sky. North Carolina, she thought, but did not ask. It did not matter. Only distance mattered. Men in dark uniforms rushed up with a gurney. Their movements were efficient, but less theatrical than Cal's team, more medical, more grounded. Maddox was transferred with care. Emily stayed close, hands hovering as if she could steady him through sheer will. As they rolled him down the ramp, Maddox opened his eyes and caught hers. "You are staying," he rasped. Emily swallowed. "I am here," she said. Maddox's eyelids lowered again, and he let himself be moved. They wheeled him into a bright corridor that smelled like disinfectant, but cleaner than Harborview purer. No stale coffee, no microwave heat, no waiting room fear. The walls were plain, the doors unmarked. Emily moved with them, her shoes squeaking on polished floor. Her wet scrubs clung to her legs. Her tote bounced against her hip. A woman in medical gear met them at an intersection, hair tucked under a cap, eyes sharp. "Dr. Hanley," she said, and extended a hand to Emily without hesitation. "I heard we have a ghost story on board." Emily blinked. "I am not a doctor." Hanley's eyes flicked over Emily's hands, the blood on her cuffs, the way she moved around the gurney like she owned the space. "You are the one who kept him alive," Hanley said. "That is enough for me." Emily's throat tightened. She did not know what to do with respect anymore. It felt unfamiliar after years of being treated like a tool. They moved Maddox into a recovery room, equipment already humming. Emily helped transfer him, checked lines, adjusted fluids, confirmed the chest tube seal. Hanley watched, then nodded once. "Good work," Hanley said. Emily's hands paused. Her eyes burned with exhaustion. When Maddox was stable and sedated, the room finally exhaled. The monitors beeped slow and steady. Emily stepped back and realized her legs were shaking. Cal waited in the hallway, leaning against the wall, arms crossed. He looked like he had not slept in days and was still fully ready to fight a war. He studied her face. "You need clean clothes," he said. Emily huffed a tired breath. "I need a shower and a job." Cal's eyes stayed steady. "We can handle one of those right now." He pushed off the wall and walked her down the corridor to a small room with a bench and lockers. Inside, a folded set of clothing sat on the bench. Dark medical fatigues, clean socks, a plain hoodie, a radio earpiece still in packaging. Emily stared at it like it belonged to someone else. Cal closed the door behind them. "You are safe here," he said again. Emily turned on him. Her voice came out sharper than she intended. "Safe," she repeated. "I got fired. Men with rifles tried to grab me. I am carrying a piece of data that apparently makes me worth killing. My daughter is sleeping in a dorm while people who can buy whole hospitals are hunting." Her chest rose and fell fast. The anger was not just fear. It was exhaustion boiling over. Cal let her speak. When she stopped, he nodded once. "You are right," he said. "You are not safe in the way you used to define it. But you are protected." Emily stared. Her eyes stung. She blinked hard, refusing to cry. Protected by who, she asked. Cal's gaze did not waver. "By us." Emily looked down at her hands. They were still speckled with blood. Her nails were short clean in the way nurses kept them, but there was grime under one from the hangar stairs. She let out a slow breath. "I cannot go back," she said quietly. Cal nodded no. Emily's jaw tightened. "My license. My career. If this gets out." Cal's voice stayed calm. "Your career ended in that break room. Not because you failed. Because you were in the way." Emily's mouth tightened. "That is not comforting." Cal's eyes softened just slightly. "It is true." A knock came at the door. Cal opened it. A man in fatigues stood outside, posture stiff, eyes hard. He looked like he had been carved from discipline. Behind him, Dr. Hanley hovered in the hall. The man's gaze locked on Emily. Cal stepped aside. General Maddox stood there. He moved slower now, one arm held tight against his side, face pale but upright. Pain sat behind his eyes like a storm cloud, but the storm did not own him. Emily's nurse instincts flared. "You should be in bed," she said. Maddox's mouth twitched. "I should be dead." Emily glared, then swallowed her frustration. He was going to do what he wanted. That was clear. Maddox stepped into the room, the door closing behind him. He looked at Emily's wet scrubs, her tote bag, her tired face. "They treated you like trash," he said quietly. Emily's throat tightened. She did not answer. Maddox's gaze shifted to Cal. "Do we have it?" Cal nodded. "She has it." Maddox looked back to Emily. "You have something that can break a machine that has been grinding people down for years. You did not ask for it. You did not chase it. It landed in your pocket because Henderson trusted your hands more than anyone else's." Emily stared at him. "I do not want to be in a war." Maddox's eyes stayed steady. "You have been in a war. You have been fighting it one patient at a time while people like Bradley Kent cut your supplies and call it efficiency." Emily flinched at the name. Maddox's voice lowered. "Aegis does not lose money quietly. They will look for the drive. They will look for you. Harborview will be a hunting ground for them now." Emily's stomach tightened. "Henderson." Maddox nodded. "He is being treated. He will not be easy to kill twice." Emily's shoulders sagged. The relief was there, but it did not erase the fear. Maddox's gaze sharpened. "You cannot return to your old life." "Not today." Emily's hands clenched. "Then what?" Maddox looked at her like a commander looking at a person he needed, not like a man begging. "We need you here," he said. Emily stared. "Here." Maddox nodded once. This unit runs on secrecy and speed. We have weapons and intel. We have operators who can walk into hell. What we do not have is someone who can keep them alive when hell bites back. Emily's mouth went dry. You have doctors. Maddox's eyes narrowed. We have doctors who follow rules. We need someone who knows when rules become the weapon. Emily's pulse thudded. She felt the weight of every signature she had never received every time she had been told no by someone sitting safely behind a desk. Cal watched her silent. Maddox spoke again. Chief Medical Officer, not a title for show, a job, authority, resources. Emily laughed once, short and bitter. I do not even have a badge right now. Maddox's gaze did not waver. You will. Emily shook her head slightly. My daughter. Maddox nodded as if he had expected the answer. She will be protected, not with promises, with people, with eyes, with protocols that work. Emily looked between Cal and Maddox. She saw something in their faces that made her chest tighten. Not manipulation, not pity, need. She lowered her gaze to the tote bag, then pulled it open and reached inside. Her fingers found the SD card again. Small, hard, cold. She held it up between them. If I give you this, she said, what happens to me? Cal's voice came quiet. You stop being alone. Emily's throat tightened. Alone had been her default for a long time. Alone in her apartment after her husband died. Alone on night shift, holding strangers' hands while their families slept. Alone in the break room with Bradley Kent blocking the door. She swallowed hard. I am not a soldier, she said. Maddox's mouth twitched. Good, we have plenty of soldiers. Emily's eyes burned. She blinked, then reached for the clean clothes on the bench. She did not say yes. She did not say no. She simply moved, because sometimes a decision was a body turning toward a door instead of away from it. Cal stepped back to give her space. Emily changed quickly, hands efficient even in fatigue. When she pulled the dark medical fatigues on, they fit better than she expected. The fabric felt sturdier than scrubs built for motion. She tied her hair back again tighter, more secure. When she stepped out, Maddox's gaze swept her once, then nodded. Better, he said. Emily's mouth tightened. Do not get used to ordering me. Maddox's eyes held hers. I am counting on you ordering me. Emily's breath caught, not because of sentiment, but because she understood what he meant. She had spent years being ordered. It was time she stopped accepting it from the wrong people. Cal opened the door. The corridor outside felt different now. Not because it changed, but because Emily's posture had. They walked together toward a small operations room where a secure terminal waited. Dr. Hanley met them with a sealed envelope. For you, Hanley said to Emily. Emily opened it and found a plastic card inside. No hospital logo, no smiling stock photo, just her name and a number. Emily stared at it. Cal watched her face. You are not fired here, he said. Emily swallowed. Maddox spoke quietly. We copy the drive, we secure the original, then we sleep. Emily looked down at the SD card, then at the terminal. She slid the card into a reader with careful fingers. The screen lit up with folders and strings of numbers that meant nothing to her. Cal and Hanley leaned in, scanning fast. Maddox stood behind them, breathing shallowly through pain eyes sharp. Emily watched their faces as they read. She did not need to understand the details to recognize the weight of what they were seeing. Names, Cal murmured. Hanley's voice stayed steady. Transfers, accounts. Maddox's jaw tightened. There it is. Emily felt her stomach turn. She thought of Bradley's tablet, the sterile language of policy, the way money had decided whether Henderson lived. Now money was deciding who got hunted. Cal looked at Emily. You did the right thing. Emily's mouth tightened. I did my job. Maddox's gaze stayed on the screen. Sometimes that is the same thing he said. Emily did not answer. She watched the progress bar crawl as the data copied to an encrypted drive. When it finished, Cal removed the SD card and placed it into a small metal case. He locked it and handed it to Maddox. Maddox tucked it inside a secured pocket with the care of a man handling a weapon. Emily exhaled slowly. Her body finally started to feel the night. The exhaustion that had been held off by adrenaline pressed down. Her eyes felt gritty. Her shoulders ached deep. Cal watched her sway slightly. "Sleep," he said. Emily looked at him. In a room like this, with a general stitched by her hands and a conspiracy sitting in a metal case, sleep felt impossible. Still, she nodded. A small room was assigned to her. Plain bed, clean sheets, a lamp that cast soft light. No window. The quiet was thick. Emily sat on the edge of the bed with her tote bag in her lap. She pulled out the photo of Lily and stared at it. Her throat tightened. She pressed her thumb over her daughter's smile like she could touch her through paper. A knock came soft. Cal stepped in holding a small cup of tea. He offered it without a word. Emily took it. The warmth seeped into her hands. Cal stood near the door. "They will watch Harborview," he said. "Bradley Kent will be questioned. Not by hospital compliance." Emily's gaze stayed on the tea. "He deserves it," she said. Cal's voice stayed flat. "He will talk if he thinks it saves him." Emily looked up sharply. "He knows my daughter's name." Cal nodded once. "That is why we already moved eyes onto her." Emily's breath shook. "Thank you." Cal's gaze softened briefly. "Get some sleep, ma'am." Emily flinched again at the word, but she did not correct him. She did not have the energy. Cal lay left, closing the door quietly behind him. Emily lay back and stared at the ceiling until her eyes finally closed. When she slept, she dreamed of canvas walls and gunfire, and a young face with blue eyes. She dreamed of her hands pressing down, refusing to stop. She woke to silence. Not hospital silence filled with distant alarms, but the clean silence of a place built to contain noise. She sat up, heart racing, then realized she was not in her apartment. Not in Harborview. Not in Helmand. She was here. She washed her face in cold water and tied her hair back again. When she stepped into the corridor, a man in fatigues nodded at her as if she belonged. Dr. Hanley met her near the medical bay. Maddox was sitting up now, grimacing through pain, watching a monitor that displayed maps and lines. Emily walked in and checked his vitals without asking permission. She adjusted his IV flow and inspected the dressing. Maddox watched her hands. "You work like you own the place," he said. Emily's voice stayed matter-of-fact. "I work like you are my patient." Maddox's mouth twitched. "Fair." Cal entered behind her. He looked cleaner now, rain gear gone, hair still damp. His eyes were tired but alert. "We have confirmation," Cal said. "Aegis attempted pickup at Harborview. They had inside support." Emily's jaw tightened. "Bradley." Cal nodded. He made his call. Someone answered. Emily felt anger flare again, but it was quieter now, focused. Maddox's gaze held Emily's. "You can stay here and let us handle the noise," he said. "Or you can step into the center of it and make sure our people stop bleeding when the noise turns into bullets." Emily stared at him. Then she looked at the tray of supplies beside his bed. The neatly labeled syringes, the stocked drawers, the equipment that would have been locked behind budget approvals at Harborview. She thought of Henderson gripping her wrist. "Don't let them." She thought of the lobby, the salute, the word "ma'am" spoken like she had rank she never asked for. Emily drew a slow breath. "Bring me a supply inventory," she said to Hanley. "I want to know what we have and what we do not. I am not improvising with empty drawers again." Hanley blinked, then smiled once. "Yes, ma'am." Emily shot her a look. Hanley lifted both hands slightly, then left the room. Cal's mouth twitched the closest thing to a grin. Emily turned to him. "Do not start." Cal's gaze stayed warm for a beat. "I will not," he said. Emily looked at Maddox. "Get some rest, General." Maddox nodded, eyes narrowing with a hint of satisfaction. "Yes, nurse." Emily left the room and walked down the corridor with her shoulders squared. Her scrubs were gone. Her badge was different. The building was different. Her hands were the same. She had work to do.